Hello and welcome to Michael and Ivanka's grand podcast, an exemplar of remote working in action. A podcast created every week over FaceTime. My name is Michael Forrest.
And I'm Ivanka Magic.
And this week we're just going to shoot the about just how it's going with the, this COVID thing. All this pandemic stuff, how life has changed, just some theories we might have developed on the subject.
As experts.
As experts. Nominal experts. I got told, if you want to, you can be a nominal expert for a company in China as a Western person and just get paid tons of money. You just sort of vaguely be aware of how stuff is done, in the West. Yeah, you should be we had this guy when I had my stand. Yeah, so we're nominal experts.
Nominal experts. Self-appointed experts.
Self-appointed.
In chatting about stuff.
Indeed. How are you, listener? Hope you're okay. Hope things are okay. So let's start. Hi, Ivanka. How's life? Life
is peculiar.
Peculiar? Telling me.
Life is odd. 1 minute I sit having sort of that slight sense of palpitate. Oh my God, the world has just been taken out from under my feet. It's true. And the next minute I'm like, oh, it's quite nice hanging out with the child and the husband. It could be worse. I quite like these people. We have had the chat about the fact that at least we are used to spending a lot of time together. I think there's going to be a few families out there that just aren't used to being all in the same house 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with minimal outlets. So I think that's one of my blessings I've been counting this week.
I feel very lucky in that respect too. So it's been, it's good. And we've got enough space that we can, one person can go and work out upstairs and the other person can just be downstairs doing something else.
There is a bit of that, and so that's a blessing. I have cracked sourdough this week.
What?
I have made the views I've had on Restaurants Brighton Instagram for my sourdough. I did post a picture on Grand Podcast Instagram as well because it just looked too delicious not to boast. But it's taken me probably. I had a go at making sourdough starter in January. Made some breadsticks, made a loaf. It wasn't very good, but I've continued to feed the starter.
Did you start from air and flour?
I started from air and flour,
nice.
But weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I've just kept going, I'm not going to make it today. I better just feed it again. I'm not into this. I'll just feed it again, all this work. So it's probably 3 months of feeding the starter. And now it's just so easy and looks so impressive and tastes so delicious. I'm incredibly proud of my Corona achievement.
Very good. Listeners that don't want to do a 3-month starter dough process, I saw a good video yesterday it was this weird video by the guy that usually does this map of physics, map of biology, map of what's the Big Bang kind of things. But it was just him in his house showing how to make this sort of faux sourdough loaf using it's yeast and beer to sort of do it, and he sort of showed it. You have to put it in overnight, but it looked good. So just wanted the quick version. I'll put a link to that.
I do have a bread recipe that is incredibly easy, in which because we've made our own bread for a couple of years basically, and it's just yeast, not sourdough. But this is I'm delighted. The child gave it a massive compliment.
Excellent.
Mummy, this is delicious. It tastes like England bread. So yes, I'm a up and down, left and right. I'm delighted to have started a new contract this week, which means that as a family we have a revenue stream because we'd lost all our revenue streams. So it's okay.
Shitting hell.
Yeah, so it's a bit luckily, I think in many ways because we were prepared for mentally and financially, we'd been shoring up our position because we were anticipating a poor Brexit. It's not a, oh my God, disaster. but one wouldn't want it to persist for too long. Though I was reminded this week, and I got in touch with somebody I did a project with at Wellcome Trust, because I remember when, we were sitting around talking at the Wellcome Trust, and she was telling me that one of the studies they'd done is to say, I'm sure I mentioned this on podcast last time, is to, not text people when there's a pandemic or an epidemic, because it creates panic. And then this week, the government texted everybody to say,
sure did.
Stay indoors. And so I messaged her, so I thought of you this morning. So I thought the scientific recommendation was not to text people to stay indoors. But hey.
Politicians don't listen to science. How am I doing, you say?
That's what
I am
said,
having a weirdly... I'm basically a disaster capitalist, it seems, in a sort of very low... That's kind of how I'm feeling. I've, certain app sales have kind of gone through the... Not through the roof, but they were... It was the same app that was sort of weirdly growing last year, and I was like, hey, if I just make this a bit more, I probably can... this can be what I'm doing. And just this last couple of weeks, and then partly because of the pandemic, it's like I've seen these app sales go to a level that I can actually start paying myself again. And it's like, what? And I'm having these thoughts and I'm just trying to adjust to it. And there's this weird thing of, yes, there's this pandemic. And hearing this, you've got to stay indoors. And that thing from Boris the other day, it brought me down because I was just I don't want to I don't want that feeling of getting into trouble if I leave the house. Because I have got a studio that's separate from the house, but there's no one else here. And I'm not seeing anyone on the way, and I'm on my bike, and it's I'm having that conversation with a police officer in my head, to start with, and going, I need some sort of badge or something that says I'm not being an idiot, or that kind of thing. And you sort of go, how are they even going to enforce this without some sort of terrifying surveillance? I don't even know. But what was my point? The sun's been out and it's just been really nice. And I've just been cycling to and from. There's no traffic. And then looking at, checking these sort of my iTunes Connect, App Store Connect every day and go, what's happening? And just going, I've kind of reached a point. And I'm I could just get a stupid haircut. Doesn't matter now. I can do whatever I want. I can you sort of see, I don't know, someone like Lil Pump as this musician who I sort of look at him and go, you are not afraid of not being able to make music for a living. He's got these multicolored dreadlocks, tattoos all over his face, all over everything. He's 100%, this is who I am. And I'm I could never sort of go that way. I can never, because I've also got to sort of appeal to people that are going to give me contract work. And now it's I just really have to just be me. And then that's fine. Which isn't really, I'm not suppressing the desire for some sort of crazy hairstyle. I'm just if I wanted to have a weird, ugly musician's hairstyle right now, I could.
Good. So you are experiencing freedom.
I'm experiencing freedom. It's nuts.
How exciting is that?
And who knows? It might not, it could die off again, but I think it has been slowly kind of building for the last, maybe this is just a momentary boost, but actually it gives me time to build up my main app as well and kind of spend 3 months kind of getting that going.
Yeah, I was thinking that your Change app is the kind of thing that people could... and I did think of you this week that people could get into just mood tracking. I mean, what else is there to do? It's and also there's a couple of reasons where I think it's interesting. One is from a historical point of view. This is the first pandemic we're experiencing, and it'd be interesting. I think. In some sort of future, at some future point, it would be interesting to see how different people experienced it around the world and what happened. So there's a bit of recording living history type thing,
Yeah,
where the change
exactly.
style app could come into it, either for personal reflection or for we're saving all my daughter's drawings because it's quite, she's like suddenly become producing like 15 drawings a day, so saving them all anyway. So but there was that, and then also I saw there's a number of universities in different countries asking people to track symptoms, whether they feel well or not, so they can use the data to start anticipating peaks and things. So again, I had actually wondered this week whether there's a version that you could, because I know your Change app is very much about protecting the data and keeping the person's data private. Is there a version of the app you could, white label sell to somebody and go?
Well, it's not even that. I've started working on like how to export it into a spreadsheet and actually start tracking your data against different things. So I've just added in a new, and I was looking at doing like some JavaScript tutorial. And I was like, this is just, people just want spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are the most popular programming language. So I figured out how to sort of get stuff into a spreadsheet the most easy way. And I've been sort of figuring out how to track that against like the Google search trend of coronavirus or workouts or money is the one I've just done. And so I'm going to start putting videos out on that. But I'm thinking like when I do the data export, I can do quite a lot there. I can say, okay, there could be like let's kind of, how did the hashtag coronavirus, or like filtering at the point of export so that you only share the stuff that is interesting to the person asking for it. So I think that's how I would see that working.
Well, I think data's something everyone's going to be asked after, both the qualitative, like how did everyone feel, and what's the mood, because there are some climate scientist-y type people who, who speak about the fact that this may not be the first, this may be the first pandemic, and this might be something that becomes a relatively regular occurrence. And if that is the case, we'll also need to learn how to deal with it. Because, and have some definition of new normal, or, when the annual 60-day lockdown comes in, what are the ways to stay healthy and happy and sane, and what, I don't know. I mean, perhaps that's a bleak view, but, at the moment, I think one thing's for sure is there's going to be a new normal after this.
I think there will be. I think in the middle of something like this, we always sort of overestimate how different everything will be. I think, and obviously that there is a tendency to look at SARS and then look at COVID-19 and sort of start drawing a kind of curve upwards to kind of crazy illnesses. But yeah, I think the hardest thing about all this is figuring out new habits and new routines and new things, new behaviours. And that's sort of like always a bit of a stressful overhead. That's like, well, what am I allowed to do this? Can I do that? Can I do that? How am I going to, what am I going to do now that this sudden thing has changed? And then, I think next time round, people will kind of already have that kind of queued up. It'll be like, oh yeah, let's do this for a bit. And it should be a lot less of a shock for everyone. But it's that thing of, like the disaster capitalism conversation, it's sort of like sometimes you just need a big event to be a big disaster to be forced to figure out new things. Like I offered some help to the guy that runs the gym. He was just talking to him, like they've had this kind of plan to start kind of rolling out more digital stuff for ages and ages, but it just keeps getting put off and put off and put off. And now it's like, okay, well, we need to do this now. And I think often that, there has to be an inciting incident that gets people to kind of look at what they're doing and make a change like that. And once you've made it, it doesn't mean you can't go back to the old way. It's just now you've got another option.
I was thinking particularly about sort of gym and like this natural health centre that I'm part of. Like once you start offering digital classes, do you roll that back? Does it disappear? What are the benefits? Why? How do you then entice people to come in? What are they coming for? If on, so there's we had a conversation yesterday, which is about offering, treating the online classes as though there's a new studio. It just happens to be on the internet. Because we've got a number of classes running in different rooms. So if we've got a new room called the Zoom room, then what classes run there? Are they the same classes? Are they different? Do they have to be in different formats? But yeah, I think it's. I do think we're always going to want to come in for a nice. There's nothing replaces standing next to a trainer going,
no,
boy, stand up straight.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing that's really hard to do on camera. Yeah. And I think that there will be a place for that. But yeah, like the guy, this gym owner guy, who was also kind of saying, I don't think it's going to go back to what it was before after this. And like, we're not going to, I don't know how, because he was wondering, because they've got this, it's very much very expensive, you pay and there's a person kind of model. And now they're going to sort of change that, and they're trying to figure out how to charge for sort of digital content. I'm like, that's tricky.
It is tricky.
And because I spend my whole life trying to move my business model to something a bit closer to yours that's less scalable, then as a result, potentially, I can actually get paid for. But certainly a new normal that I think encompasses more possibilities, maybe.
Yeah,
like there'll be new infrastructure. There'll be new. I don't know why Zoom is like everyone's using Zoom for everyone. I don't know why Zoom is getting, and it's not that good. And like I tried to. There was this fantastic fungi film that we sort of subscribed to the thing, and they were going to have they had a big Q&A event yesterday, and you were supposed to sign up and say, and then it was that I just clicked on it. I was there like 10 minutes early, and it still said, there's a maximum of 100 members in this, and so we couldn't see it. And it's like, you should just have streamed this, and then we could have written comments. Like, why are you using Zoom for this? And there's
I think
I'm looking for something better than Zoom at the moment.
I am too. I haven't quite. I've tried to get people to try out Jitsi, but it's like I'm talking foreign.
Yeah, well, that's not a great name, is it?
No. But what was I going to say about new normal, new infrastructures? That was it. Everybody is open to the fact now that change happens. It's not the sort of. It's not just a few people have had the rug taken from under them. It's everybody. And it's quite interesting as well to see how different people react.
Yeah.
Like I've definitely seen some people protecting themselves, and then there's people that are trying to protect their community. And it's quite, I definitely see like people's values coming out in different forms. And I think that's, for me, Nick and I were having this conversation the other morning. It's like what's interesting now is that how this shakes out the other side. How do we protect? There's going to be loads of job losses. How are we going to treat those people now? Is it going to be different because it's going to be a broader set of jobs and a broader slice of society that are losing their jobs? Airline pilots, they're always been, airline pilots, you're so clever, you fly an aeroplane. Suddenly there's going to be loads of unemployed airline pilots. Do they have to live on 36 quid a week? Or are we all shocked at the very idea that they would have to live on that kind of money? I don't know.
Which is what we should be. It's like, I mean, I said it last week. I think if there couldn't be a clearer demonstration of the fact that people, it's not about personal responsibility all the time. It is to a point, but the way that Conservatives, the way that Boris keeps talking about it is, well, we're going to be supporting businesses. We're going to help businesses to businesses. And I just think it's like the businesses are our dads or something that are going to sort of reallocate that, redistribute that wealth on the government's behalf. When like you only have to think for 1 second to know that maybe a business owner, I don't know what you picture there, but they're not necessarily going to be motivated by your each individual's well-being. And that's the difference between socialism and conservatism is well, no, it should go to the people involved directly. It shouldn't go via some weird kind of awkward business owner that maybe has kind of different ideas about how they should spend the money. And you get Weatherspoon's guy. I hope people will, who were swayed by the Brexit propaganda, will see the Weatherspoons guy's true colours now. Get a job at Tesco.
it's just I think that's this, and it's the same on the news here in Croatia. It's all about how do we help business, and then through business that money will be distributed to people.
It's like what planet?
And also, but wait, we're not going to do it. It's like the self-employed thing that came out yesterday. What is it?
Yeah.
They have to wait till June probably. It's like, and exactly how are they paying their rent in the meantime? Like, what are they eating? Like this. Surely, if there was ever a moment to sort of just blanket, surely it's cheaper and easier to blanket, just send everybody £1,000 a month or £2,000 a month till it's over.
Oh, but then people who still have jobs might get some money that they don't really need. And then they might stop doing the bullshit jobs that they're doing right now, working from home remotely, and might actually think about doing something useful with their lives and maybe becoming care workers or something. We couldn't have that.
Exactly. But yeah, I think it's like, I mean, the amount of... I was talking to a friend yesterday, and he was like, he'd watched one of the press release things. And it was like, we're working on this, but it's really hard. And he was like, yeah, it is really hard. Yes, being a government, but that's your job. Don't come to me and tell me that your job is really hard, because you're going to get absolutely no sympathy whatsoever. So yeah, there's a bit of that as well. It's like, yeah, it's tough, I know, but you've wanted to be a prime minister for your whole life. Yeah, off you go.
And I did see a Telegraph piece comparing Churchill to Boris. Like I saw the piece on YouTube. It was like, sort of not. I can't remember how they came out, but they certainly sort of put it up there. Winston Churchill, Boris Johnson, and I just like, you'd better
We were talking to some extended families. Go, I feel really sorry for him. Like, I don't feel sorry for him. It's like, yeah, it is hard, but this is what you sign up for if you want to be prime minister. The poor man.
Poor man. Yeah. Imagine if he wants to be Winston Churchill, well, try a war, Boris. Try having a war. Try Nazis bombing London. See how you get through that.
It's not all standing up at dinner parties and being cheered. It's I think it's
some condescending people saying, well, I'm very.
So we've got this sort of like government wanting to give us all money via our daddies who are our business owners. So there's that. Then there's also, I think though on the flip side of that is what I'm calling personally Corvidism.
Yes.
Because we've long discussed the fact that socialism needs a rebrand. So, if it has to come under the banner of a pandemic recovery and survival, then, so be it.
Bloody be it.
So we're seeing some behaviours from conservative governments all over the world, frankly, where they're having to respond in a society first sort of a way. So that's interesting. And people seem much more accepting of it if it comes, off the wave of a virus.
Yeah. When it's them that feels like they might be under threat, suddenly everyone's up for maybe a little safety net. It's amazing. Do you think... well, first I'll say I am enjoying... I went onto Twitter this week and I was on there 5 minutes and I didn't see anything that made me angry or hate humanity. So I think it feels like people are being nicer to each other. And maybe I've just been on the wrong bit, but usually I'd just got used to any time I went on Twitter just going, what is wrong with people? And even you're watching the I think people have you seen that have you seen that Trump Vice video where they just do a supercut of him denying that that the coronavirus is a thing as the death count tots up?
Oh no, I haven't seen that.
But even seeing the Trump stuff, it seems like he seems weaker. He seems, and I sort of look through comments on stuff about Trump, and it's harder to find people defending him, where before it was 50-50, and you'd be like, how is this possible? Now it's 30-70, 20-80, and you have to hope that this is going to turn the tide of post-truthism, if nothing else.
Yeah. I think there's going to be, sadly and very unfortunately, there is going to be no denying the body bags. There's just not going to be avoidable. It's like Italy. I'm not watching British news, so I don't know what it looks like. But here, I don't watch the news here either. To be honest, I listen to it on the radio. But it's like, what's happening in Italy is devastating for so many people. There's like, the death rate is massive. And they're literally having to call in the army because the mortuaries can't handle it. They can't get people cremated fast enough. It's awful. And they've been for some time having to do that triage of, sorry, granddad's old enough now, I'm afraid you're just going to have to take him home and keep him comfortable because there's nothing, we're not going to waste a respirator on somebody over a certain age. That's the reality. Yeah. And I think that reality will be undeniable because unfortunately this virus isn't going to be far from any of us, sadly. So, and I don't know how you're going to be able to fake news your way out of it, to be honest.
I think back to, I sort of wait, once the numbers surpass the 9/11 numbers, that's got to be sort of, then America has to sort of stop going on about 9/11, don't they? Hopefully. But I worry because when that 9/11 attack happened, I thought, they're going to have to look at themselves and realise that they're doing, that you can't predict everything, that you can't control everything, that sometimes stuff happens that you can't control. And they really did not take it that way, did they? They were like, no, we're just going to go much, much more aggressive and still really just reach further, trying to find someone to blame. I don't think Trump can start a war on China over this, though, can he? They wouldn't. Maybe he would fight. Maybe he would try, but you'd have to be pretty stupid to support him on that. It's like, and that's not to say that there isn't plenty of evidence of people that are already stupid enough to support him. But I hope that this will do the thing I hoped that the last horrible disaster for the US did. We're watching, I mentioned this though, a frivolous thing. We discovered this program on Amazon Prime called Brain Dead, which is about these space bugs that are coming down and eating half of people's brains and makes them super argumentative and conservative or super liberal. And it basically that was the explanation for what the hell was going on in 2016 and has been ever since. And actually it was made in 2016, which I find absolutely astounding. So they've got sort of Trump on the TV, but it's actually before he was elected. But it's the best explanation I've seen so far, that space ants are eating people's brains. And so people are just operating in this binary way, uncompromising way, can't have a conversation because, the brain fell out. You saw the brain fall out. So
what hope is there?
Once they're out, is there any putting it back in? I don't know.
I don't know. I think the other on the subject of predicting and knowing and all this kind of jazz and control, because the other flip side of it is of all of this and the gathering of the data is that another conversation that's been on the news here, and I actually didn't check yesterday whether it went through the Parliament, is this idea that they can monitor every citizen's mobile phone to find out if they're adhering to quarantine, to lockdown. So by tracking your mobile phone, they can prove that you did or didn't stay in your house. Yeah. Which I think once you open the door on mass surveillance, don't know how you shut it again.
Kind of feel like when they got on the phone to the network providers to say, can you send this message from the government to everyone on your network? They probably went, and we're gonna have to talk about monitoring people's behaviours. So just maybe the next conversation, maybe the next call will be about that, and then we'll be like, oh, okay. Yeah,
and I think it's I think that's the kind of you sort of understand why people would say yes to it. Yeah, sure. Keep us all safe. Yes. Those baddies that are leaving their houses, let's trace them. Or I think in the UK, there's a bit more of an expectation that neighbours will be spying on neighbours because there's not enough police.
Well, yeah, I haven't seen a policeman. I have been worrying about seeing police this whole time, but sort of knowing that the reason that Boris had to make that announcement was because, and you're seeing it now, is like the police are having to go into the park with a loudheader and go, "Stop having a f***ing barbecue. What is wrong with you people? We're on lockdown. Stop having a party." And like it's like there's a long way to go, but you sort of think, okay, that's the situation they're dealing with. Like, people are being just willfully stupid about this.
I think they're being in denial.
Well, I was going to say that, like, when something big changes, that I've definitely had that myself, like the stages of grief, like the denial was there for a while, as you will hear from the podcast. But I think it is denial. I think also what's interesting and why I think we have waves of sadness at the moment. Or I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday. It's like we're we're going to need to grieve for the pre-pandemic work, when we were carefree, footloose and carefree, and we could lick strangers and not get coronavirus. But not that
everyone was horrible to each other all the time. Maybe we won't miss that.
No, but that came up as well. Like, even when you break up from a bad relationship, it's still sad.
Yes, of course.
You still need to grieve it.
The change is the thing. You need to grieve the change.
And that's why my app is so useful for getting users through this difficult time.
Clutch it. Yeah. I do think it's going to be really interesting if you're tracking it.
To take the analogy a little further as well, I also think because we're in the middle of it, it's like that bit, in between when somebody dies and the funeral, where you're sort of in this limbo where you haven't yet had the ritual of saying goodbye, and you haven't sort of had that full stop period where it's not going to stop, but it's like another step in the journey of finding the new normal. And so I think that's another thing, like, until we're all allowed out of our houses, we haven't had the funeral. Like, we haven't had we're still sitting at home going, they've not let us know yet when we can do the funeral.
What I will
3 weeks.
What I will say though is, like, I mean, and this was, their hands were forced on this, but the sort of, okay, we're doing this, we're taking this measure on a Friday, and then everyone knows what the measure is, and then on the Monday, oh, actually, we've realised that's a stupid measure, we're changing it to this, and now everyone knows what this is. And even though it hurts, it's like, oh God, I'm not allowed to leave the house now, oh God, I'm not allowed to do this. At least if you have someone saying, no, this is the thing, then that makes it a lot easier to get into that process. And if people were sort of being woolly about it all and going, oh, well, maybe some people, if it was like a complicated set of guidelines or, then I think it would be a lot harder for people to process and sort of realise that this is something that there is no going back from. This is something that has happened. This is something that you have to figure out, where we go from here.
I think that is the difference. Like, for a bit too long, it was kind of personal choice. And I think that's grossly unfair. That's too much pressure for on the subject of, I feel a bit sorry for Boris. He looked really tired. It's like, this is the job of the leader, is to say, what do we do? Like, the ship's sinking. What do we do? Man the lifeboats, like, that's the job of the leader.
Oh, Lord.
So
it's true.
Yeah, I think... but, here they did an interesting thing where they kind of announced the day before what the next day's measure is going to be. So you have a bit of time. From tomorrow, you will not be allowed to do this. And so everyone goes, okay. And then they go, right.
Everyone rushes to the shop. And
So I don't think it's quite like it just sort of goes, right, from tomorrow, we are going to be deciding that we're going to close schools. Is that, so like everyone can has this 24-hour acclimatization period, and then they go, today is the tomorrow we were talking about yesterday, and from now on you can't go in the playgrounds. So it's kind of a I don't know. It's just different, but not grossly different. Just different.
Do you want to hear my toilet paper theory?
Oh yes, I'll have your toilet paper theory, and then we can talk about clapping nurses, and then we might even have done a...
Yeah, that sounds good. So my toilet paper theory that I reached, that I was like, why is everyone so worried? Why is toilet paper the first thing people go to? What is this behaviour? Why are people being this way? And you sort of start thinking, why are people hoarding this stuff where there wouldn't be a problem if everyone left enough for other people? And then I was thinking about it, and I thought, this is what happens when people start thinking in that conservative way. If Daddy tells you that you are responsible for your own success or failure, then it's your fault if you run out of toilet paper. You're going to look like a right idiot if you didn't buy any toilet paper when the rush came. It's all your fault. You are personally responsible for any problems. And it just makes people selfish in a situation like this. All it does is makes people not think about anyone else. They just think about themselves. They just do get what they want, forget everyone else. And that is just because daddy government, the people in charge, have for the last at least decade been saying, no, this is the correct way to live. This is the neoliberal worldview. I don't know if it's neoliberal, but it's certainly the conservative worldview. It's your fault if you don't do it. So no wonder everyone started hoarding stuff. That's what you've been telling them to do as a government for the last, as long as they can remember. So don't be surprised.
Yeah. Because the other side of it is obviously if it was a shared societal responsibility to ensure that there was sufficient toilet paper, then you'd be going, it would be more of a, don't worry, of course the supply of toilet paper will be maintained and it will be distributed equally. And so nobody need worry about toilet paper. Go home and play with your children.
But just on a more personal level, like you're a socialist. You're used to thinking about the needs of the many versus the needs of the few. You're used to going like, well, how is this going to, what if something bad did happen to me? What you're used to trying to empathise with other people that maybe haven't been as lucky. Then you're going to feel a bit worse about being selfish and buying 116 rolls of toilet paper at once. So that explains it perfectly to me.
My mum's explanation was just, Ivanka, it's just mass hysteria. People are hysterical. They've lost it. My mum's knitted a bear. I told you. When it's got its boy personality, it's called Corvid, and when it's its girl personality, it's called Corona.
Next topic.
My next topic is the clapping the nurses.
Oh, yes.
Which I tweeted about this morning in a sort of mumbly way. And it's like, I totally, I watched the little videos and my mum talked about it, my sister talked about it, and we all felt deeply touched, and it makes you a bit teary, and it's like, well done. But for fuck's sake, can't we just give them a bit more money? Can't we just pay them? These are the people that are going to hold our hands as we die, and we can't be fucked to pay them properly. That, my friends, is a travesty as far as I'm concerned.
But Ivanka, you don't understand. We don't have to pay them properly because the job has intrinsic value.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I do realise it's a vocation and all. And if you want to be a nurse, you just have to suffer. But I just thought,
You forgot that teachers get something out of teaching. So we don't have to pay them. It's amazing.
So they just get to feel, so that's my little...
Do you think...
And I've really... Sorry... I've just been having to hold back because people put these posts up. Yeah, it was so touching, my writing. And I'm sitting there, I write the comment, delete, comment, go, delete. Don't be a Don't piss on people's parade.
It was
Okay.
nice. I think I saw one Instagram. I'm doing this thing. I saw one Instagram post, and then we sort of heard it and knew what it was and joined in like that. And so I thought that was nice, isn't it? Like,
yeah. Beautiful.
That something like that can happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got this. I've got a new tip. It was a weird time, but I've set up my triple click shortcut on my phone to put it into grayscale, so that because when your phone's in black and white, when you look up from it, the world is suddenly more interesting. Whereas when your phone's in colour, it's your phone's more interesting than the world. So
hang on a minute. How do I do this?
So you can go into accessibility. I saw a video on it about like phone addiction and how like just the colour is a big part of it. But you go into accessibility, display and text size, color filters, and then turn on the grayscale color filter. But then you can also go, I can't remember how you do this to set it up. Oh, accessibility shortcut is down at the bottom of the accessibility screen, and you can you can drag in the color filters thing there. So now I'm sort of like trying to keep my phone on black and white, and I've also got it like I can't use it between certain hours, and I've only got 5 minutes on Instagram or Facebook a day, and I'm just like keeping it under control.
This is going to be my new experiment with the child.
Mm.
Because, I mean, the only thing she's allowed to do on a phone, because she can unlock my phone and she can play music. And now, annoyingly, and I was very happy to let her listen to music. She loves listening to music and she dances around. That was cool. But she's now discovered that bloody Apple Music has got music videos.
Yeah.
And many of them are wildly and grossly inappropriate for a 5-year-old. It's like, and you have to keep, instead of it being something safe that I could let her put some music on and she'd dance and she'd go and change it to, Simba or whatever. Like it's now it's like become dangerous again. So it's like, but if I put it on grayscale, I wonder how fascinating she'll find it.
Yeah, I think she might lose interest a bit. I'm glad I could help. I just wanted to do a thought experiment of, could there be a health service that was resilient enough or good enough to get us through a pandemic? Or is it just that you'd need like 100 times more capacity than is actually needed? But then would that be the worst thing in the world, to have a healthcare system that had 100 times more capacity? And I guess then you'd have like people could just casually kind of make appointments with doctors, and there'd be a lot more sort of care that could go on, couldn't there, in the downtime? But then when a pandemic came, you could probably, take care of it. I
think it's a little bit, I think it's a pandemic resilient health service would be one that could anticipate and respond much, much earlier. So yes, it's definitely about capacity for sure, and a bit of scaling. But also, one of the things I watched a video about how the Chinese have dealt with this pandemic, because they had SARS to practice on. Apparently they had special like fever clinics. So if you have a fever, you didn't go to your doctor during this this test and control, but you would go to a fever clinic. And as you arrive at the fever clinic, the person greeting you's got all the protective gear on, and they test you for, make sure you haven't just got the flu, make sure you haven't got something else, a bacterial infection, and then test you for whatever the new pandemic causes. So it's like, weirdly, I think if you can anticipate early, you don't need to have that giant capacity, because I think you can, you can flatten the curve. Do you know what I mean? Like, right. So it doesn't need to
just at that A&E.
No.
So I've got a blog post brewing, which is why we need a less efficient NHS. I think could be quite a good one to write.
That could, that could be really interesting.
I think it's like that they've kind of put all this effort into making the NHS the most efficient thing ever, but you can't have an emergency service that's efficient. It doesn't. It's like it's the opposite of what you need. You need something that has capacity for something unexpected, and if you only have the capacity for one stab wound per week, then you're probably not going to do a very good job of helping people in an unpredictable, unexpected emergency.
And I mean, all of these emergency services, they practice a bomb going off or a fire or they don't practice a bomb going off every single day in, unexpected, which is what this, this is in terms of acceleration of people who are sick. This is more than a war. Like they're having to deal with something way bigger and sustained and ongoing. And, it's like, I think one of the interesting things the NHS is doing, from what I can tell, is this volunteer thing. So so civilian volunteers, untrained volunteers to deal with things like making cups of tea and taking food and doing all the things so that the medically trained people can focus on the medical stuff. And that is a way of increasing capacity. But without looking at the various bits of data I've superficially dug into around the world, the countries that have the better recovery rates are in countries that have a higher number of hospital beds per citizen in any case, and normally, so they just have better capacity. Yeah, and that's it. That helps.
I guess can you add the private beds onto the public beds? How's the private health system?
I think
don't know.
That just needs to. I think that. I mean, mother was telling me that the government's going to run the trains. That's when we had the conversation about. Yeah, that's why we had the conversation about Corvidism, because it's like, when you need these things. If the objective is the accumulation of private wealth, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just doesn't work because they're needed for basic survival. Yeah. So anyway,
yes, that's what we say every week. Thanks for listening.
Yes, thanks for listening.
If you like the podcast, go to grandpodcast.com. I figured out how to start getting blog posts on there. I'm sure Ivanka will start writing all sorts of interesting posts for the website going forward. But the good news is that I kind of wanted to start writing blog posts. I'm just in full blogging, video making mode, and I realised that some things I wanted to write about made more sense on the podcast than on the thing, on my own site or somewhere else. So that may be there soon, because cool. I wanted to write this one about toilet paper as a blog post.
Very good.
But yeah, if you like it, you can subscribe there, and then there's all sorts of other things you can do.
Yeah, you can Patreon us. Many people may not know what a Patreon is, but a Patreon is where you get to give us a little bit of money every month, and then all the little bits of money add up to the money that it costs to, even host the podcast, the website, exactly. Whatever it is that we do. So, if you fancy buying us a coffee, as they say, on various websites, then do buy us a coffee every month via Patreon.
Yeah, that would be
the cheapest one is $1.
Imagine how many pints you would have had to buy us if we were in the pub together.
Yeah, man.
If it's a pub chat with me, imagine how much that would have cost you.
Yeah, it's true. That is a good way to do it, especially in a Brighton pub or London pub with a fancy craft beer. A pint of neck oil ain't cheap, people. It ain't cheap.
No, right. All right. Well, and obviously we'd probably have to buy you one back, but let's forget about that.
So let's ignore that bit.
Ignore that bit. And so thanks very much. Hope stay safe, everyone.
Yeah.
Hope you haven't been too hurt by this situation. Hope you're figuring it out. Hope you're past the depression phase into acceptance.
I have got a new email sign off that I've nicked off a customer of ours, which is stay well and stay happy.
Yay. Bye.
Bye.